Hey guys, how's it going? Jordan Locke here, back with another update on the Nolan Wells case. This particular update could be a really big deal, and the reason why I say that is because if it's true, it departs from everything we've been told so far about Katie McCormack and the relationship Katie had with Nolan's friends.
Katie dry snitched on those boys and y'all didn't even notice. Let me break it down for you because here we've got the Snapchats from Katie, right? You're gonna notice her teal swimsuit. Right here, we're gonna notice a striped swimsuit. In this video from the 3 boats, you're gonna see Bart's boat. And in this corner, you're gonna see a girl in a striped swimsuit right here. And then right next to her with the same hair is a girl in a teal blue swimsuit. Katie is on Bart's boat in this picture. But wait, they tried to be real clever playing with the lighting on this. Hopefully you got your brightness turned all the way up because you'll notice Katie is wearing a white hat. Now here we've got the picture from the tow, right? Teal swimsuit, white hat.
This update was brought by a person who does a lot of these types of investigations on TikTok. She is extremely ADHD and autistic when it comes to gathering details from situations like this, a lot more so than the average person. And she has been known to pick up on lots of really minute details that a lot of other people don't pick up on. And sure enough, she's been covering this case and she's found, let's just say, a lot of new information that is very different than what we've been told in this case so far. So, as you guys know, Katie McCormack is the girl who Nolan apparently stayed behind to speak with. And I say apparently because the only proof we have of that is Nolan's friend saying that, right? So Warren in the Officer Tatum interview said that Nolan stayed behind to hang out with Katie. Now, we haven't heard much from Katie regarding the situation, which is a bit odd. You'd think because she was so central in this case that she'd want to come onto social media and at least make a statement or something, especially because we know for a fact that she knew Nolan very well. We don't know if there was something romantic happening. We don't know if they were in a relationship. We're not really sure what was happening. But Nolan and Katie knew each other pretty well. Nolan's parents have confirmed this. So you would think that Katie would want to come onto social media and kind of clarify her stance on this entire story, but we haven't heard anything from Katie. Now, the person who we have heard from is Katie's sister, Gracie. Gracie came online early in this investigation and stated on Facebook that her sister didn't really spend that much time with Nolan at all, right? They hung out a bit, they talked a bit, they might have spent a little bit of time together, but they didn't spend anywhere near as much time as Warren and Warren's friends are making it seem, according to Gracie. Now, if you recall from the Warren and Tatum interview, Warren said that when he got back and they were wondering where Nolan was, he was texting with Katie.
The next day, everybody was panicking and everybody's texting Katie, because she was obviously seen with Nolan the whole day at the island. Katie sent a message to my buddy the next day and said, this is the last time I saw him, he's really sweet. But she also mentioned that the last time she saw Nolan was when my buddy was yelling at him to get on the boat.
Which in and of itself is a huge problem because in the police report, Warren states, and Warren's friends also state that they didn't know Katie. They stated that Katie was an unknown female. So how is Katie an unknown female, but then you were texting her that night and all your friends were texting her also to find out where Nolan was? So right away, we have a pretty big discrepancy there. But on top of that, Warren says that he was texting Katie and he said, coincidentally, in the interview with Tatum, he said he has a screenshot of the texts.
And I heard the girl that he was with, Katie, had text somebody that she heard people yelling
Correct.
For Nolan to get on it. Is that true?
And I have a picture of that. She texted my buddy and the next day.
If you have a screenshot of the text, why don't you just have the text? If you were texting Katie, why can't you just show the text? Why did you keep a screenshot of the text, knowing how big this case is and the investigation is? So once again, we have another discrepancy that doesn't make any sense. But on top of that, Warren also told Officer Tatum that Katie, in their texting conversation, said that Nolan left her as soon as the boats departed. This is kind of a big problem because Warren also stated in that interview earlier that Nolan wanted to stay to talk with Katie. So if Nolan wanted to stay on the island to hang out with Katie and snuggle with Katie, and that's the reason why they left, Why are you now saying that Nolan left Katie as soon as the boat left? That was his whole reason for wanting to stay on the island in the first place, according to Nolan's friends. So something is very off here with this entire situation, right? Either with Nolan's friends or with Katie. Once again, we haven't really heard much from Katie, so we don't really know her side of the story. And as I've stated, I find this kind of odd that she hasn't said a single thing about this entire situation. But this new update has to do with Katie and Katie's relationship to the friends. So I want to dive into this. But before I get into that, guys, I do want to address this white versus black thing when it comes to the Nolan Wells case, okay? It seems like a lot of people are making this out to be a white people versus black people thing, and that is so ridiculous. It is beyond ridiculous to state that, okay? This is not a white versus black thing. This is a good people who have decency, who want to see justice, versus other people who are racist both ways and ignorant and don't care about justice. That's what this comes down to. To use as an example, there are plenty of white people who are online right now who are saying, wait a minute, Nolan's friends' renditions of what happened do not make any sense whatsoever. And they're sitting here refuting the rendition that Warren gave when he spoke with Officer Tatum, and the renditions that Wyatt is giving, and the rendition that Bart is giving. There are many white people who are saying, guys, this makes no sense. This needs to be looked into further. I'll give you a couple of examples. Jolly Good Ginger is a former Army interrogator who picked apart Warren's interview with Officer Tatum and stated as a professional interrogator that Warren's interview made no sense. He kept jumping back and forth between timelines. He was obfuscating facts. He didn't show any emotion towards his supposed best friend and brother who literally just died tragically. Jolly Good Ginger points this entire thing out and has several videos on the fact that Warren's interview is extremely suspect. Jolly Good Ginger is a white guy. Another person is Nancy Grace. Nancy Grace is an investigator who, as clear as day, sees that there are massive problems in the story of Nolan's friends in this entire case. Nancy Grace is white. Secret Service Sam is a person who lives in Mississippi who happens to be white. He's been making multiple videos on the fact that this makes absolutely no sense. The fact that the friends are saying that they left Nolan on the island and then Nolan leaves Katie as soon as they leave, when they were first saying that that was Nolan's whole reason for staying on the island in the first place. Secret Service Sam has been saying that this rendition makes no sense from the beginning. He's a white guy who lives in Mississippi. Another example is a guy named Daniel Collins, who's just a random white guy who lives in Mississippi, who dropped his 2 cents in the situation and gave a rendition of what he believes to have happened. We're actually going to get into his video in a little bit. But guys, these are a bunch of examples of white people who are saying Nolan's friend's side of the story makes absolutely no sense, and this needs to be investigated further. So please stop with the narrative that all white people are bad and all white people want to see this case go away and all white people want this case to be closed with the assumption that Nolan just accidentally drowned and that's it. It's not all white people. It's racist white people. It's the far right-wing MAGA people who want this case to be closed and are insisting emphatically that this is a 100% drowning. At the same time, you have black people who are siding with Nolan's friends and their completely inconsistent story. Look no further than Race Batum Tatum, who has been milking this entire investigation as much as he could. Race Batum Tatum has been saying from day one that the friends are innocent despite all of the problems, despite all of the holes and inconsistencies in their stories. Tatum has been saying from day one that the friends are innocent and that Nolan just drowned, despite having any evidence to say that. So that's an example of a black guy who is being completely ignorant and milking the situation for as much as he possibly can. So guys, please stop saying this is a white and black thing. This is not a white and black thing. This is a good people who want to see justice regardless of the victim's race versus bad people who are ignorant and racist. Okay, that's what this comes down to. Now, let's get into the situation that we talked about before regarding Katie and Nolan's friends, Warren, Wyatt, and Bart. We touched a little bit before on what Warren said about Katie and Nolan. We touched on the fact that Katie has not really said anything publicly, but Katie's sister has stated that Warren greatly exaggerated how much time Nolan and Katie spent together on Horn Island that day. Now, on top of that, I'm not sure if you guys remember or not, but recently there was a picture circulating online that showed Bart and Katie hugging each other, right? This was a big picture. People thought this was indicative of the fact that Bart and Katie may have had a relationship. And then Bart came and said that that was not Katie, that was a completely different girl, and that he didn't even know Katie. Okay, so keep that in mind. Bart is saying he doesn't know Katie, all right? Which we already know to be suspect because Warren said that everybody was texting Katie that night when Nolan disappeared. So Bart says he doesn't know Katie. However, a TikToker named Nerdy Pink Panda, who fancies herself as somewhat of an investigator. Now, she's not a professional investigator, but she is extremely autistic in the sense that she does a lot of these investigations because she is very detail oriented and she picks up on a lot of things that are inconsistent in people's stories. She's been covering this Nolan Wells case, and she has picked up on a very peculiar detail. She has picked up on what appears to be Katie McCormack on Bart's boat that day in July 4th. Now, this is very problematic for Nolan's friend's stories because Bart states that he doesn't know Katie. I want you to watch this video from Nerdy Pink Panda and watch the evidence that she presents. Once again, this is allegedly, but this is very interesting. Watch this video from Nerdy Pink Panda.
Katie dry snitched on those boys and y'all didn't even notice. Let me break it down for you because here we've got the Snapchats from Katie, right? You're gonna notice her teal swimsuit. Right here, we're gonna notice a striped swimsuit. In this video from the 3 boats, you're gonna see Bart's boat. And in this corner, you're gonna see a girl in a striped swimsuit right here. And then right next to her, with the same hair, is a girl in a teal blue swimsuit. Katie is on Bart's boat in this picture. But wait, they tried to be real clever playing with the lighting on this. Hopefully you got your brightness turned all the way up because you'll notice Katie is wearing a white hat. Now here we've got the picture from the toe, right? Teal swimsuit, white hat. Oh, but that's not all. Again, hope you've got your brightness turned all the way up because here we've got somebody in red swim trunks. Oh, and would you look at that? Red swim trunks. Here he is on the shore next to Nolan after the fight with Tristan.
Okay, so it's very interesting that Katie deleted most of her pictures from that day on July 4th, but now we find what appears very much so to be Katie on Bart's boat. This is huge if it's true, because what this states is that Bart was lying about not knowing Katie, which calls into question the entire original assertion that Bart and Katie may have had something going on at some point and Bart may have been jealous. Once again, this is all allegedly. However, this brings into question Bart and Nolan's friends' sides of the story. Now, I want to show you another video that another person posted. And this, once again, is another white guy from Mississippi who is a good person who sees that there are problems with the stories presented by Nolan Wells' friends. And he takes the assertion, he is of the opinion, based on everything that he's seen so far, that something was happening between Bart and Katie, and Bart got jealous. And while we don't have any facts to prove this, okay, this most certainly is a likely scenario. I want you to listen to his video and hear what he has to say.
My take on the Nolan Wells case, Bart did it. Now, this is allegedly, but I believe that Bart did it. I believe that Bart had some type of relationship with Katie. Katie was obviously with Nolan. Bart had a jealous rage seeing a young black male with a white female. We know in states like Mississippi, I see it all the time in my community where white guys get jealous to see black guys with white girls. I've seen it a million times, and people who deny this are flat out lying. I believe what happened was that Bart put Nolan in a chokehold, and he didn't realize his own strength, and Nolan did not wake up. Hence the reason why we hear in the background of the CITO call, we hear, "Damn it, Bart, Nolan, wake the fuck up. Is he dead?" All this is allegedly now. Well, if he just accidentally killed him, then why wouldn't they bring him to the police? Because Bart has so much to lose. He was the star football player on his way to the NFL. A manslaughter charge, whether it's involuntary or voluntary or a negligent homicide, is not going to look well on his resume and would obviously disqualify him from his NFL career. Because of his football stardom, and apparently he has a family with the same pedigree, he has clout around town enough to get people to remain silent, enough to help construct an alibi, and also put the fear of God in these kids. Tell them that you're also going to be implicated in this, and we're all going to go down. We're all going to be arrested. Also, why they tried to place Bart not at the scene initially. Now, they went on a speaking tour. Warren did the most talking, and listening to him talk with Officer Tatum, he almost did too much talking and told on the crew. Warren says that when they got the boat back, that he went upstairs to talk to the father of one of the kids. Rather than hanging out with everybody downstairs, he says that they were talking about boats up there. Now, why would you even bring this up? Like, why would this even be a part of the story if it was such an innocuous thing that you were just going upstairs to randomly talk to a father about boats? The reality is because they weren't talking about boats. They were constructing an alibi and a cover story. And when they came downstairs, it was automatically like, oh, what happened to Nolan? Where is Nolan? Has anybody seen Nolan? Let's call the Coast Guard. Why would they call CETO? Why would they call the Coast Guard? Because it creates a timeline. It creates like a paper trail of where they could have been anywhere but with Nolan. Also, why would you call the Coast Guard if you truly believe that Nolan just was behind with the girl Katie? Even if Katie had came back at that point, why wouldn't you think he's off with some other girl or doing something else? Why would you think something nefarious happened? Why? Because you had his phone and you knew that something nefarious happened. Again, this is allegedly. Let's smoke them out. What doesn't come out in a wash always comes out in a rinse.
Okay, guys, so you heard it from Daniel Collins. He is stating that it is his belief, once again, not fact, it is his belief that there was something happening between Bart and Katie, and that Bart may have gotten jealous, and there may have been a fight that took place between Bart and Nolan, and Bart may have choked Nolan out, which would line up with the fact, don't forget, it would line up with the fact that in the autopsy, in the independent autopsy, they stated that there was bruising on the back of Nolan's head. That would line up with some sort of assault that involved choking. Now, recall also that the independent medical examiners who did the independent autopsy were not given the neck bones to determine whether there was damage to Nolan Wells' neck, which there most certainly would be if Nolan was choked to death. Now, I've stated before and I'll state it again. I never thought that this was a premeditated situation between Nolan and Nolan's friends. In fact, we still don't even know if Nolan's friends were the ones who were responsible. I think it is very likely that there was a fight between Bart and Nolan. We know for a fact that Nolan's friends got into at least 3 fights that day. Trayston said that he got into a fight. Warren said that his brother got into a fight, and there was one more fight that happened that day also. We also heard the audio where we see a dark-skinned person on Horn Island saying, "Give me back my phone." Now, Trayston says it was him, but that's all we have. All we have is Trayston's word saying that it was him. And you'll notice that this seems to be a theme in this situation, right? We have a bunch of people's words saying that something happened, but there's no definitive proof that that's what happened. Now, this assertion that Katie is on Bart's boat, when Bart says that he didn't know Katie, introduces an entire new element into this story. And it's one that I think that people really, really need to pay attention to and look more into. We need to determine whether Bart and Katie knew each other before this trip to Horn Island on July 4th. Now, speaking of Bart, I want to bring up one more point that makes absolutely no sense. This is something that Warren stated in the Officer Tatum interview. And it really seems like this Officer Tatum interview is really biting these guys in the ass because there are so many problems with this interview. From the way Warren was acting to his assertion of the way things went that day, lots of problematic behavior. Warren states to Officer Tatum that Bart was initially not going to go to Horn Island on July 4th with him. He tells Officer Tatum that he called Bart that morning and asked Bart if he wanted to come, and Bart was like, yeah, sure, yeah, definitely, I'll come. And so that's when Bart decides to go to Horn Island with him. Now, Warren states that he's really good friends with Bart. Warren also states that this trip to Horn Island for July 4th had been planned for a while before July 4th. So if Warren is good friends with Bart, and Warren had been planning this trip to July 4th, why did he not invite Bart before the morning of? That makes no sense. Was Bart just going to stay at home and watch TV on July 4th, knowing that all of his friends were going to go to Horn Island and party? Also, Bart says yes, Warren can use his boat to bring people there, and then suddenly Warren has 10 people that go on Bart's boat. So if you weren't going to initially be counting on Bart's boat to go out to Horn Island, how are these 10 people going to get to Horn Island? Do you truly believe that Bart was just going to sit at home on July 4th and had no plans, and Warren called Bart the morning of to ask him if he wanted to go to Horn Island and invite him to come along? I don't know, guys. I don't know. I don't know if that makes much sense. So I wanted to bring you guys these new pieces of information that cause more issues in the story of Nolan Wells' friends, right? And these angles have to be investigated, right? We need to find out about Bart and Katie. We need to find out if Bart was planning on going to Horn Island July 4th, or if Warren's telling the truth and Bart was only invited the morning of, right? Because that's huge. If we find out that Bart was invited before, then that means that Warren was lying. And if Warren was lying, why did Warren lie about Bart not being invited to go to Horn Island? So guys, we are going to continue investigating this. We are going to continue bringing forth new information. I've stated this before, we are not going to let this go, okay? Something happened to Nolan, is my opinion. Nolan didn't just randomly drown on an island with over 1,000 people and no one noticed it, okay? Nolan didn't get left on the island without his phone and without his clothes willingly. Something happened, whether it was with Nolan's friends or whether it was with a different group of people. Somebody knows something. Somebody knows what happened to Nolan, and we are going to get to the bottom of this investigation. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you soon.